What you're about to hear is a conversation with Slavoj Žižek. My compatriot Michael Downs is teaching an introduction to Žižek course this fall. And Slavoj, right after doing this, really wrote a foreword for my book, Timenergy, Why You Have No Time or Energy. He has been a real help to giving Theory Underground some kind of, name recognition. And so, huge thank you to Slavoj Žižek. With that said, of course, I do want to add that Theory Underground is not strictly Žižekian. That actually there seems to be two internets. There is on the one side this sort of Deleuzian, CCRU / Nick Land kind of side of the internet. And on the other side, it's this more Lacan, Marx, Hegel, Žižekian side of the internet. Theory Underground not only encompasses all of that, but also brings in thinkers such as Heidegger, Arendt, Nietzsche, Foucault, Levinas, Baudrillard, Debord, as well as lesser names in the world of theory who are so important, like McLuhan. These kinds of thinkers must be understood if we are to understand the situation we are in today. But this goes beyond the thinkers that we draw off of. We're also not strictly political in any traditional sense. Some will accuse us of being anti-political, and depending on the person that we're thinking of, when they say that, I might just say, yeah, sure.
Today we need thinking.
We're definitely not radical or revolutionary by anybody's, standard definition. We're also not leftist in any sort of standard sense. And so really, please put a big question mark over all things identity related here and just appreciate it for what it is. I have to say this little disclaimer before letting you listen to our conversation with Slavoj because otherwise we'll get a bunch of people who come in here and expect a certain kind of content and then get all mad when they don't have it served up. Look, there's more successful ways of doing things if we were just trying to please the algorithm. But we're trying to walk a fine line between growth and the integrity of the vision itself. Thank you for understanding. Please enjoy this conversation. And if you're interested in getting involved or supporting, stick around till the end of the video. Enjoy. We're live. Welcome, Slavoj. Welcome. It's good to have you back.
And I'm very glad and honored to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. And so, quick little note about this conversation and the stream today. It was the 1-year anniversary of Theory Underground on December 6th of this, that was this month. And so I invited Slavoj to come, celebrate and also to plug the course that Mikey will be teaching on his work in 2024. And he was traveling that day, but we're very grateful he was able to join us today. And so I'm going to let Michael say a couple introductory things just about that course, and then we'll get into some questions we've got for Slavoj.
Can you allow me just half a minute to tell a funny, very depressive story?
For sure.
You could have checked it on 6th of December. I was supposed to be in Munich giving a talk with an innocent title for Euro. But then, when I was already on the way to Munich, I got a phone message saying that I'm strictly prohibited even to mention anything about the Middle East.
Oh.
Specifically, they were worried for me saying something critical about the present Israeli government and so on. And then that's the horror today. This talk, what I want to say is that they told me that they got calls from some Bavarian Ministry of Culture, which supports this theater, that if I appear there and even mention Middle East in any way, all the state support for this theater will be cancelled. So, that's our reality now. My God, It's not even years ago. Me and my friends often proposed variation of this motive. How, yes, everything is permitted today, but the point is you are marginalized, you are ignored, and so on and so on. No, it's not even that. Now, open censorship is returning all around Europe. And don't forget, Julian Assange, in a totally irrational way, if you take seriously the reason why she is in prison, it's just to prevent for a possible extradition that he cannot escape. And it's totally unnecessary. She is still in a alone 23 hours per day. 1 hour he can walk, but again, not communicate with others. He got married, has children. He can see them only through glass window. It's so irrational. So I think, again, it's no longer that, permissiveness, but and so on. No, we are returning to quite a strict censorship again. That is. Sorry for interrupting you. Please, Mikey, go on.
So, yeah, I mean, as far as the course goes, I said this before you got on the call, Slavoj, but my approach to it is it's really going to be an introduction to your theory of ideology. And what I've found over the years that really helped me get a solid overview of what you've done is in your books, you're always covering a lot of ground. And so one chapter will be on ontology, one chapter will be on politics, one will be more on film or pop culture. So for your theory of ideology, what I've done is I've had to figure out the key chapters in each of your books to read kind of back to back and almost take those chapters and make them into one book itself, where your great chapter in Sublime Object, chapter 3 on Kvoy and ideological interpolation, that's kind of the foundation of it.
But you are right, yes. Yeah. Because sorry to interrupt, just to complete, you take me as somebody who just agrees with you, but adds whatever. It's excellent choice. Not that I'm proud of myself, because my reference there are two references, if I remember correctly. My friend Mladen Dolar plus that guy Kritz, no? Because our starting point was Louis Althusser interpellation. And Mladen, already, my God, 30 years ago, wrote a basic text called simply, I think, Beyond Interpellation. The idea is to go against Althusser, who thinks that interpellation transforms individuals into subjects. One can almost turn this around. This was already proposed in some text by Etienne Balibar, who said, what if subject, the abyss of the subject fantasy, comes before and interpellation transforms subjects into individuals? You are already this confused void of a subject, but then interpellation tells you, no, you are a free individual, liberal society, blah, blah. Because, again, individual is a precise term today, central part of liberal ideology and so on and so on. So, again, I want us to congratulate you that if I were to isolate one feature of my confused, all around to be found theory of ideology, it is this. It is how to move beyond interpellation. What already has to go on in order for an interpellation to work. Thanks very much. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's great. That's great to hear. And I mean, so if we start with that chapter as our foundation, what I'm going to do is, and here's the thing, you're always humble on this, but superego at this point, that's your concept. It's not Freud's. It's not even Lacan. I know Lacan said the superego is what commands enjoyment. You're the one who's really developed superego, as this other thing opposed to the big other, opposed to the official mandates. It's the obscene law within the law. And this concept of superego, although obviously Freud's always going to get the credit for it, the way that we all use it now, it's your concept. And so
sorry to interrupt you again. I hope you allow me this. I'm just completing. No, here, of course. No, but it's not just fake modesty. Maybe I brought out some things which nonetheless were already there, but where I agree with you, it's that to understand things today, not just this obvious example, new populist leaders, Trump, blah, blah, but also around the world, you need the obscene underside of the ideological project. And let me give you the last example. You know that now recently I'm publishing many analysis texts on the mess going on in the Middle East. And I don't know if you already talked about it. No, we didn't. What I discovered is something very interesting. Many so-called radical leftists go into the idea that, Israel is just colonizing, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm much more nuanced. I condemn Hamas and so on. So my shock was why I am, at least in Germany, even more attacked. And a Jewish friend explained it to me wonderfully, that if you just brutally attack Israel, it's the standard line, blah, blah, blah. But what annoys hardline Messianic Zionists is that I cannot be reduced to that, you know. I'm very moderate, precise argumentation. That's why I annoy them even more. So here is the last example, which is you ask me. Is maybe the most horrifying, bringing out the obscenity. Now, again, I'm not talking about some crazy marginal Zionist. Was it reported in your media? Netanyahu himself, a couple of days ago, in a public statement, not private dinner, referred to, in a speech, I think, to some IDF members, Israeli army, referred to Palestinians as Amalek. Now, you know who they are, if you know the Bible. Amalek is one of the name of Canaanite, whatever. You know, when they said God gave us this land. Look, the Bible, how it was done. Moses came to the mount to look down. Moses dies. Then God appears to Joshua and says, go down and kill all of them, Amaleks, also their wives, children, even animals, I don't know what, you know. Now, here is a nice point of what you brought out, obscenity. First, let me be clear. I'm not condemning Jews for this. Let's be clear. In that time, thousands of years ago, everybody was doing this, you know. I'm not painting Jews as especially brutal. So I'm just saying that till now, if you draw attention to this episode from the Bible, you were instantly condemned as anti-Semitic, you know. You don't understand, blah, blah, blah. It was politely ignored. Now, the representatives of Israel, Netanyahu, openly evoke this, openly naming, again, if you name Palestinians Amalek, it means you call for their genocide, openly. Isn't this sad? Obscenity is open here.
Slavoj, would you say, so what they're doing is they're doing a full-on explicit identification with the super egoic dimension?
Yeah, that's so tragic. Yes, it's no longer, you know, maybe it makes us jobless potentially, or it makes easier to analyze because you no longer need a refined analysis of the implications and so on. My God, the guy is openly saying it. You are fighting Amalek, and then the guy, Netanyahu, openly says, remember what it says in the Bible. So when we hear again and again, and I'm opposed to Hamas, that Hamas calls for genocide and so on. Sorry, these guys are also doing it now, openly. And so again, sorry to interrupt you, back to your point. Yes, that's also very important, that obscenity, which is also the moment where surplus enjoyment enters the show and so on and so on. Because, one of the supreme moments of ideological enjoyment is when, now I will put it in extremely simplified way, when your dirtiest fantasies can be actualized, but under the guise of doing the highest duty, doing God's work, and that's the game playing, like kill, ruin, burn them, and so on. Amalek, it's the Bible. This makes me a great, this makes me really pessimist. Because, I was asking, sorry to interrupt you, but I would like to get this out. I was asking myself, why Israel is doing this in Gaza now? Because, again, this is another obscenity. They are not doing it discreetly and so on. All around the world, you see the drone shot, ruined building, blah, blah, blah. And my question was, I asked many of my Jewish friends, but you know what this is doing to the growth of anti-Semitism all around the world? I hear from many Asian and especially, of course, Arab Muslim countries that it's like a volcano getting ready to explode. In Muslim countries which are or were perceived till now more moderate, you get demonstrations, hundreds of thousands of people, like it's getting ready to explode. And then a Jewish friend explained it to me. These crazy guys who are now in power, Netanyahu and the fundamentalists, they want this. They are not bothered by the potential explosion of anti-Semitism. Why? Because in their logic, this means, you see, we are victims again, so we should have the right to defend ourselves in any way we want. You see this in the craziest way now. It's very sad on the West Bank, where literally the population there is now under such tight control that the only thing Palestinians can do to do something, I don't approve this, but Hamas appears as the only active subject. PLO is passive. So the horror is that Israel is pushing the population towards Hamas so that then it can do the ethnic cleansing and so on. It's, again, no longer hiding. It's really an extremely dangerous time. Sorry for interrupting.
Don't be, hold on. Don't be sorry. I wanted to say that this is ultimately the return of your repressed speech from December 6th. So it makes sense that it gets its moment here, that you actually, you can always come to Theory Underground to say what they won't let you say in Germany.
Can I ask you something? I'm sorry to slightly change the topic to all of you, so that maybe I already asked you this, but why am I so deeply affected by your title, Theory Underground? Because you know which underground is that is brought out. I associate. It's that wonderful quote from Virgil that you find at the beginning, the opening page of Freud. If you cannot move the heaven, move the underground. That's what we should do today, moving the underground. I read in this way your title, not just this pathetic, authentic theory, repressed underground. No. Move the underground, because the underground is coming out. It's not like today when you watch what is Hamas doing and now madness, what is Israel doing? Again, if you do just some pure political analysis, explicit ideology, you miss the point. Without obscenity, you miss the point. Now we are back at you, Mikey, because that's how I read again your title, Theorist Underground.
It's perfect, because my question is exactly on this point, my theoretical question. So here's what we got. I'm going to give a little bit of context for viewers, and then
And I promise I will not interrupt you now. Yeah.
So here's what we got. So for somebody who's not familiar with Zizek's theory of ideology and his political, a lot of us talk about Zizekian politics as a politics of the impossible, which is to say, a politics that seeks to retroactively make what is impossible possible. Which is to say, it restructures the entire symbolic order. And so something that used to be impossible, it was unthinkable it could ever happen, actually becomes a living option because the symbolic order has been restructured. Now, throughout Slavoj, it's weird, I'm talking to the viewers now, but throughout Slavoj's work, early on, he would refer to this as the act with a capital A.
Yeah.
And later on, as you got into more Badiou's work, then you start talking about the event with a capital E. And so what we're doing at Theory Underground, we know we're not the act. We know we're not the event that's going to restructure. But what we're trying to do is facilitate the possibility of an act, the possibility of an event that would restructure the symbolic order. And we're trying to, cultivate, facilitate theory on this level of the underground, on the level of our background familiarity in society. And for us, though, one of the key things is trying to understand, theoretically, for you, do you think the act and the event are the same thing? If they're not the same thing, we're really curious to know how you differentiate them. And some of us think, well, act has to be done by an agent. It's a subjective actor, whereas an event is kind of, in the Heideggerian sense, even like it's causeless. It doesn't have an actor. It's something objective that restructures the symbolic order. And because we're so invested in trying to facilitate the event at the social level, at the level of the symbolic order or the act, we need to know theoretically, should we keep act and event separate? Should we just think they're identical? So for you, if they are different, how should we differentiate the two?
It's a wonderful question. And now I'm embarrassed to admit that, is this the wonderful vulgar phrase that you have? You almost caught me with my pen down. That's how it is. Because I was not thinking a lot about this. But now if I spontaneously improvise, not in any mystical sense, but in quite a rational sense, I would nonetheless maintain a difference. It's not even a temporal difference, but I would say event is this retroactive restructuring itself. So in some logical sense, but not necessarily temporal sense, event opens up the space for the act. But it's also more complex. You do something and you cannot plan this in advance, but some gesture, which can be even a small gesture and so on, nonetheless changes the entire field. So for me, I would try to bring here together the two aspects, act and event, but keeping them separate. So it's that event is, I will sound almost Heideggerian here, a new disclosure. Things appear in a new way. For example, extremely simplified way. When does true feminism begin? Not with just women want more or whatever. Because in the early stages, women wanted more, but within the space of the existing power relations. Like, I want more free time, I don't, blah, 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 and so on. An event happens when you don't just want more within the existing space, but when you redefine radically this space itself, radically redefine the woman's role, and so on and so on. So, more and more, I will say something that will maybe, I'm not sure here, even appear a little bit critical of Badiou. I think that event is less than an act, because basically just with this radically our subjective position, but at the same time more, while in the sense that you can do the same thing, but if an event happens, this thing will amount to a radically different thing. You know, which distinction I would like to introduce here. Let me take, and I don't even totally support them, 2-3 examples of shift, of not truly radical, but let's say revolutionary in the superficial sense break. Let me mention when socialist regimes were breaking down at the end of the 80s, early 90s, all around, or even in, I quoted this years ago often, how the Shah regime disintegrated. A Polish, I forgot his name, sorry, sociologist, wrote a wonderful analysis where it said there was a certain small event, in itself unimportant, in Tehran, even a month or two before the regime of the Shah collapsed. At a certain big square, there were demonstrations, police approached them, and a policeman shouted at them, "This were prohibited," and people didn't do this, they just stood there. And the policeman, embarrassed, simply turned around and walked away. In a couple of hours, not even days, all of Tehran was talking about this. So, although the act, if we understand as the act, the big social change, didn't yet happen, you know, precisely, and you describe it retroactively, the whole symbolic space changed, so that although, again, actually, the regime of the Shah secret police still functioned, at some level, that's the mystery. Everybody, even members of the regime itself, knew the game is over. It didn't yet happen, but they knew the game is over. And when socialism was falling apart in different countries, I tried to isolate, locate this moment. Usually it happened before. Usually it happened the way it happened in Iran. Before, you know, this symbolic break. Like, all of a sudden, you can put it also in a more pathetic way. You are no longer afraid if you are protesting, because you know the game is over. I think that this is not necessarily a progressive movement. For example, I hope she will say, but isn't it the way I understand it, that the way Trump is functioning now, Trump, I can see, is getting old, and it's not only Biden who is old and senile, also Trump. She no longer has that almost perversely attractive way of making fun of people and so on, which is why it was often fun to listen to him. She's getting repetitive and so on, but isn't Trump, and till now she is failing, that's good, trying to play this game? Yeah, elections, but basically it's over. At a symbolic level, she acts as if she already won, and only direct cheating can prevent him. The second thing I want to make here, a very important point, is that, sorry, do you want to interrupt me?
Yeah. I was going to ask, would you also say that with Biden being so seemingly asleep at the wheel and senile, that this also causes a sort of symbolic identification break for Democrats and kind of signs the end of an era of people believing in democracy?
Things are ambiguous, in what sense? First, this is another enigma. I only can report rumors here. I know people who know people who know people who at the end know somebody in the White House, And why did Biden do this crazy support of Israel? And it was, I think, the wrong act to do. The idea is that he was perceived as weak and so on. And the idea was, let's show the people that I can be great statesman, difficult decisions, war, which was, I think, again, a catastrophe, Then there are more vulgar speculations that he wanted to rely on Jewish support, but it was a catastrophic miscalculation, Now, blacks, Muslims, others are turning against him. But nonetheless, and that's for me the tragedy of Biden. Of course, he is not the real thing, but there are things here and there that mean something. I think overall, his economic policy is more to the left than of Obama, for example. I think it's important to give a boost to revitalization of trade, trade unions, And this was, it even shocked me. Biden did go, you remember, where did he go? To Detroit. I don't know where. He publicly supported United Auto Workers strike.
Right.
This is something, I'm not exaggerating it, So the art of politics for me is not to wait for or do directly aim at the big revolution and so on, but to do a thing which may appear just, we are just changing that law and so on, but small act which has the potential to go much further, to trigger much more radical changes. For example, Obama, I have no illusions about Obama, but Obamacare, that's why it annoyed so much right-wing liberals, It was something dramatic. Why? Because here I want to make a link to my other book, Freedom, was a nice intervention because it compelled us to confront totally different notions of freedom. For liberals, any state regulation, universal rule is already limiting your freedom. We should, of course, say, on the contrary, to be actually free, not in some Stalinist stupid way, but actually free in the sense of feeling free at the everyday level. You need something like universal healthcare, because otherwise, my God, you worry all the time. What happens if I get cancer and so on and so on? And in my country, Slovenia, this is one of the few things that people do remember as a good point from socialism. It was that, of course, you are afraid to get cancer, whatever, but at least you didn't have to worry about it. Will I be able to pay whatever? No, you were sure that the state will somehow take care of it. And you see, we should do.
The program will resume shortly, right after this DIY commercial that is not for any sponsor other than ourselves. Thank you for watching.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of the bullshit and just want to get down to it. Big ideas, rigorous thinking, and ultimately liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation. Theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is coming to a city near you. Besides a commitment to publishing certain underground theorists and popularizing certain fundamental concepts, we have toured the United States and are touring Europe to promote our ideas, courses, and publications.
You've been reading Underground Theory.
Amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run and review of books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Okay, picture this scene. America, early 2021. An Amazon warehouse worker arises from the emerging underground theory internet scene to create spaces for untimely topics and concerns that are too often neglected or kept in isolation today. Joined by a revolving cast of underground theorists, academics, and critics, he establishes what will become Theory Underground, a teaching, research, and publishing platform by and for working-class intellectuals, autodidacts, and academics who want to do more than they're able to do within the confines of academia. That warehouse worker's name is David McKerracher, and his book Timenergy is his first major contribution to the world of theory. It was recently reprinted with a foreword by none other than Slavoj Zizek, who also contributed to Theory Underground's latest book.
My Bible, it's an excellent book.
A collection of essays called Underground Theory.
What you just heard is an excerpt from the Strange Exiles podcast, episode 23, where Bram from Strange Exiles interviewed me and Mikey. For those who don't know, Mikey is the author of the Dangerous Maybe blog. We are publishing one of his books here shortly at Theory Underground. He's also a lecturer at Theory Underground, and he's someone I've been friends and a collaborator with for over 10 years. But most importantly for you all, he's a fantastic lecturer, and it's a crime that he has to do wage labor right now. One of the long-term goals of Theory Underground has been now for a couple of years to hashtag Free Mikey. That is something that I've been really pushing, but first, obviously, I have to get freed myself, so the two of us are able to do this because, you know, as Mikey said, build it and they will come. Well, I tried and I built a website and platform. I had my own app and everything, but it's been really buggy and it's more than one person can handle, and that's, you know what, a really good lesson for me. And so for now, what we're doing is moving it to a temporary intermediary platform until we are able to get some more serious funding. And ultimately, we want to be in a place like this, a real brick and mortar digital nomadic mecca where people can come from all over the world. But also, the app was really expensive, and so by quitting it, I am now able to save a lot of money, and with the help of my patrons and the students at Theory Underground, especially the monthly subscribers, I am officially able to quit Amazon and do Theory Underground full time. So thank you so much, everybody. This is one huge step forward. With that said, several subscribers did not migrate from the now defunct app to the new setup, and I'm guaranteed to lose people over time. So please, if you want to get involved, become a subscriber. If you're not even sure what this is all about but are just curious, then I've added tier 0 and tier 1 for very basic kinds of access to what we are doing behind the scenes. If you don't have any time or energy to get involved, but you do have some money to help support this project from afar, then please check out the Patreon. My patrons over at Patreon make the podcast and public YouTube possible. Thank you. As for once-in-a-lifetime events, check out the new poster for the American Idiots Theory Underground European Book Tour. Paris, Brussels, Berlin, Vienna, Linz, Krakow, Glasgow, London, and Oxford from April 27th to May 25th, 2024. 2 events are already fully booked out. Save a seat at an event by getting in contact with us ASAP. Finally, the call for proposals to our conference in Mexico on the last weekend of October 24th through 27th is out. Establish contact if you're interested and make sure to submit the form before June 1st.
Whatever. No, you were sure that the state will somehow take care of it. And you see, we should do in the confused period we live in now, we should very precisely select such particular measures. Healthcare, free education, and so on, or these trade unions, because the whole point of this, Varoufakis calls them neo-feudal masters, no? Your guys make the Amazon, ne?
Yeah.
The model of this, it's strange how at the same time they want to appear, green, ecological, taking care of, but at the same time they go crazy if you just mention trade unions,
They do, right.
And so I'm saying that this would be my idea. Act. Don't wait for the big act. Million people on the street, whatever. Local, precise interventions which have the potential to trigger further movement. For example, Obamacare, I have no illusions about it, but it compels people to think, but what is freedom? Freedom of speech, wonderful thing. But you must have material means to actualize this freedom. Free education. You must have it. Otherwise, all the talk about success, competition, blah, 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 is a fake and so on. So that would be my general answer to you, Mikey. Event is in some sense more important. With act, we jump around the event, as it were. Precise, detailed act, which have the universal potential. Just to conclude, one thing I would nonetheless draw attention to, but we should be careful, is let's never fall into the traditional Marxist trap of demanding people who stand for not the big issue of revolution, but smaller issues like sacrifice your flag. Don't press it now. In the sense of, often the standard Marxist answer to feminist wars we all know. Yeah, liberation of women, nice thing, but listen, the main thing is socialist revolution, this will be solved afterwards, and so on. Never, this also means this small, precise act. Never demand of oppressed groups to sacrifice their particular interest, which can be a matter of life and death for them, on behalf of some big universal goal. Sorry, I spoke too much, please.
Well, the only little follow-up question I have here is, because again, like talking about moving the underground, right? So my question though is, because what we do, Dave is teaching a course called Critical Doxology, where he and I, we've always been big on, philosophy. I mean, going back to the Greeks, it has to do with challenging doxa, common opinion, which, we could also call it ideology critique. But for us, that's part of what underground theory is all about, is trying to do what we can on this small scale to reevaluate and challenge the basic presuppositions of our society is obviously capitalism, but it's about challenging those basic presuppositions. My question is, so Badiou limits us to saying, okay, we've got 4 type of events: love, politics, science, and love, science, politics. What's the 4th? Love, science, politics, art. Okay. My question is,
but you got me also. Yeah.
Do we have to foreclose the possibility of a philosophical event? I mean, when you think about the Greeks, it seems to me that what Socrates did with even pointing out this dimension of doxa or common sense would count as a truth event. Aristotle figuring out the basic laws of logical thinking, right? These to me count as truth events, but they're not science, they're not art, they're not love, and they're not politics. And so I don't know if I agree that we should just foreclose the possibility of a philosophical event. What do you think about
Not only it's a wonderful question. Let me give you an insight information. One, I pressed Badiou years ago, more than a decade, on this exactly. What about this mega philosophical breakthrough? Kant, Hegel, and so on. You know what was his answer, which I'm squeezing out? He said, but the name of philosophy is philosophia, love of wisdom. So he tried to squeeze this into love. But you know what is my basic reproach here to him?
I'm sorry, what Kant did is not like falling in love. Like,
No. But that's why Kant is such a revolutionary. Kant's point is not, let's give a more truthful answer to big ontological question, what is reality, blah, blah, blah. No, Kant changes radically the terrain of the question. It is, again, an event. I think that, and he also never gave me, with all my admiration for Badiou, an answer here. The small book, which I love, short book, in which he develops the notion of event. It, apropos a particular case, does it very convincingly, concerns none of these 4 domains. It's St. Paul, universalism. And then I try to press him that a secret model for his notion of event is maybe theology, that he is more indebted toward theology. This is, with all other events, science, blah, blah, she has to cheat a little bit, But in religion, it works perfectly. Another thing,
I mean, when you look at history, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, aren't they the big events? I mean, throughout history.
Yeah, but how does it fit then into this form? It doesn't, no? Another thing is, I know I would be accused for being a standard Marxist and so on, but I nonetheless think, although it's not an event in a technical meaning advocated by Badiou, but to think like for a radical leftist group to come to power, and I'm sorry for the vulgarity, not to screw things up, not to follow the path of Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, that would have been an event that you convince ordinary people, look, that you see at everyday level life is better for you and so on, because but you, it's as if he has this dismissive attitude towards ordinary life. He likes this big event, cultural revolution, and then things return to normal, it's boring, nothing. That's why Badiou often claims politics is exceptional, truthful, politics at the level of truth. That mostly lie, but no, I think maybe the mega event is a truth event which should be measured precisely by how did things change at the everyday level for ordinary people when the big enthusiasm is over. It's no longer 1 million people at I don't know which square and so on. But you have a little bit of this Maoist duality. My cultural revolution, millions debating, and so on and so on. Okay, but what happens after?
Mm-hmm.
That would be it. Again, that would be my problem. So in this sense, I would propose, I totally agree with you, not only philosophy, but even economy, daily life, morality, and so on. If the whole field changes at this level, isn't this also an event? Here, for example, we should use, who was it, Mike, you or you, David, no, mentioned this, making the impossible possible.
Right, Mikey.
The impossible for many leftists is to really challenge capitalism. But not so that you have a brief period of radical changes and then you have a mess, more poverty, and so on and so on. That's why maybe this line of mine, I'm not sure if I already told it to you, the most depressing anti-event story that I heard is when I talked this summer, the last summer, at Birkbeck Institute with a wonderful old black lady, leftist, revolutionary, African National Congress, and I asked her, we hear all these stories, South Africa, failed state, should I believe Western media, what is the truth? And maybe she told me something that almost made me cry, so sad. She told me that the predominant feeling among poor black people today, poor black in South Africa is, so sad, nostalgia for apartheid. She said that, the standard of living under apartheid was maybe even a little bit higher, but precisely because it was a police state, there was more social order. Now you had corruption, chaos, and so on and so on. And this would have been an event to make the system efficient, not just at these big radical changes, but again, never forget ordinary people. What does it mean to them concretely?
The point, and this is Dave and I, this is Dave's term, but when Dave talks about Timenergy, and me too, what we're getting at is, look, a lot of leftists will say, we need to fight to collectivize the means of production, which is, the old classic Marxist standard of revolution. But for us, whenever we talk to Marxists, we're like, well, of course you're going to have to continue to work in socialism and all that. And for us, especially in America, but this is true all over, we don't have time and energy to do anything meaningful in our lives. We want that would be our demand, is we want a society that's structured in such a way where we have more time and energy to devote to the things that we're passionate about, that make us get out of bed in the morning. And that would fundamentally change just the status quo of our lives. It wouldn't be a big momentary thing.
This is a wonderful point, what you are saying now.
And that's
some idiot would say, this is too naive, it's humanist or whatever. But no, I think it is so deeply true. Look, I accept precisely your apparently naive terms fully, because people talk about new poverty, blah, blah. Yeah, it is there. But, people suffered more poverty than today in the United States and still found their lives meaningful and so on. So it's not that economic reality and so on. The problem is existential at this elementary level. Life is becoming meaningless. And this is reflected, it's not just because of the war, in Europe all around. This is very naive statistic measure, but it says something. You know how the birth rate is falling down in all developed countries? Do you know which is, it's economically a mega success? My younger son is obsessed with statistics and told me this. You know which country in the entire world has the lowest level of reproduction? The standard is for the population to reproduce itself, an average woman has to give birth to a little bit over 2 children. You know which country is the lowest? South Korea. Average woman gives birth to 0.8 child. And so in Europe, interestingly, it's Italy. One associates Italy with, fun, dolce vita. No, Italy is the lowest. It's in 20, 30 years, it will be dying out and so on. So yes, the point is we should insist this in all naivety. This is so important. The point is not only this, economic situation and so on and so on. If people find their life meaningful, they are ready to endure many, many things. Today, it's not that, as you said, material suffering. It's material suffering, but with no, I use my stupid metaphor, light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know what to do with it. And let me give you another problem that I hear from my Jewish friends, not even Palestinians, who are critical of the French government. That's the problem with West Bank. If Israel were to be Syrian, okay, you have to get rid of the threat from Hamas, but at the same time, under Israeli control are now in Gaza, Israel itself, West Bank, are now almost 5 million Palestinians. Give them a home. And that's the despair. And it's not just the despair in the sense of a settler violence and so on. People told me that among Palestinians, there are over 1 million of them, 1.5, who are full citizens of Israel. Crime is exploding. Their life is meaningless. This is a serious question. And again, as you said, I would use exactly your words. Because you know what's the problem?
Energy, right? Like we don't have, we're always on the go. We're always burnt out. We're always exhausted. We don't have time to cultivate meaningful relationships as adults. We don't have time to, and we don't have the energy. So that's why Dave smashes the words together. So not just time, it's not just energy. Because if you don't have your energy, you really don't have time. You have to have enough energy to do something with time for it to be time. And if you don't have...
I totally agree with you. And I would like to, for this very reason, to critically evoke a term where I became like Joseph Goebbels. I reached for my gun. The term which brings out all that's false about this, the term quality time. Let's spend some quality time together.
Right.
This is precisely fake organizing of quality time. No. In a meaningful life, you then have to organize quality time. It happens by itself when you meet friends, when you are in love, sex, or where you have a beautiful meeting, political. The moment you call it quality time, it's already this meaningless manipulation and so on. It's something so obscene in it, as if you spend it, now let's have some quality time. That's horrible.
Right. And this is
so important. Sorry, just to finish, because I think that precisely the new populist right is aware of this much more than many leftists and provides their own fake answer to this.
Right. So I wanted to say a couple of things, kind of building off of a couple of the threads that have come up here. You had mentioned my gig at Amazon. You had mentioned Heidegger in reference to something else. I kind of wanted to tie this all together because you opened your book, Freedom, a Disease Without Cure, with that story about that guy in China who's also a warehouse worker who learned how basically theory and was able to interpret Heidegger. And then you talk about...
It's an extraordinary story. I love it.
It's an amazing story, yeah. And I wanted to... So I'm teaching a course on being in time. I taught Division 1 over the summer. I'm teaching Division...
Where do you teach it? Where are you in Chicago? Where?
Theory Underground. I'm based out of Boise, Idaho, but it's the platform, the Theory Underground platform we are on here. And so most of the work that I do, like I listen to a book while I'm working at Amazon because I hide my earbud underneath my beanie here. And then I'm able to...
Aren't you risking that then something falls on you? Doesn't it distract your attention? Or...
They're afraid that is the case, and that's why there's a rule against the earbuds. But there's a subsection of us working there who hide them underneath our ear, but only one in. That way we can hear with the other ear. And when they try to say that this is a safety hazard, I always respond because I've actually been advocating for the earbuds at Amazon, and I say, OSHA has approved headphones that my brother, who works in a lumber mill, is able to use, and he's working around chains, ropes, saws, dangerous operation, but he has OSHA approved headphones. So when Amazon turns around and tells us, oh, it's a safety hazard, we just say, no, the management is just jealous because their mental work means that they can't disassociate from their labor and listen to things like we can, right? And so I wanted to... I
want to ask you something, because in polemics with that, he's popular in Europe, that Korean theorist who also brought out this motive of exhaustion and so on, Will you then agree with me? Because I tried to specify in one of my older books 3 levels of exhaustion. One is the exhaustion of repetitive physical work, or even if it's not purely physical, like simple mechanical work. But I totally see your point, because at least this work allows you to maintain an inner distance,
Exactly.
You don't have to be active. For me, although it's much less physically exhausting, it's almost, I would say that there are 2 forms which in some sense are worse. One is this, how do you call it, work of caring. You care for, I don't know, in a hospital, education, and so on. There, you have to be engaged. You have to be kind, and so on. Which is, for me, if you are not doing it with pleasure, but are paid for it, almost worse, because you have to, it's nice humanist thing, but nonetheless, you have to fake your emotions. And the worst for me is to work, even if you are better paid, in some, this, as they call it, top executive committees, where you have permanent storm, debate, blah, blah. There, you have to be very active, creative, but creative in this totally meaningless way, like how to call our product, how to do that. That's so horrible today that everybody suffers at a different level.
What book that was in that you discussed that?
I forgot. I can look into it and email you.
I think it was your one of your COVID books. You talked about exhaustion a lot.
Yeah. It's one of the COVID books. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to bring it back, I just wanted to make a plug for my new podcast, Workers of Amazon, and also this critical doxology and time energy course beginning every 4th Sunday of 2024. And so I wanted to say a quick note about, so check out, everyone should check out the first episode for Workers of Amazon. It's up on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Podcast Addict. And in that interview, you'll see it's very much like a sort of Joe Rogan long-form conversation interview that ultimately is about self-improvement and balancing your physical and intellectual goals. But the hook is that you will see me using time energy as a concept, like low key, to turn that self-improvement discourse into a critique of capitalism, because time energy is reduced into labor power, and all we're left with afterwards is exhaustion, garbage time, nothing that we can use to build relationships and our personal skills. So that's the plug for Critical Doxology, Time Energy. The book is on its way to you. I think it's still not arrived, but you do it.
But it's not, I like it that it's small book, because my idea of book for workers is always something that you can put into your back pocket or whatever. No,
right.
That book. Yeah,
not like this one. And you have a copy.
I slowly.
Yeah.
So my Bible, it's an excellent book. I'm so sad. I will now wait from propaganda for you. I'm so sad that I am not. We all do it. Yes. Nance, are you a traitor? You don't have this book, or what?
Yeah, Nance, camera on. Do you have the book or not? Let's see. He'll have to turn his camera.
But what I wanted to say is...
We're sending him to the gulag, Slavoj.
Sorry?
We're sending Nance to the gulag.
Yeah. No. What I like it is that if you look at these names, it's incredible how you, as at the same time, part of a real working process, and was for me the real miracle. You, with this concept of time, energy, and so on, you have much better sensitivity. Also for these, let's call them naively, spiritual problems. Is your life meaningful, and so on and so on? Because some stupid intellectuals would expect from ordinary work to say, who reads books, that's nothing, we care about how much I'm paid, blah, blah, blah. No, you are a good lesson to intellectuals of how don't underestimate so-called ordinary people. I think that the true enemy are pseudo-intellectuals, people who are intellectual but in the wrong way. Because, for example, being intellectual can also work in very ideological way, cynical way, and so on, which is almost the predominant ideology today. But listen, don't be mad. Now I'm falling apart. We can repeat this in a month too if you want, but now I'm over. And to do a little bit self-propaganda, can I also mention that because of this terrifying censorship, I find more and more difficult to publish text. They censor it often without asking me. I know this is a big compromise, but they are kind. I now open a Substack post there, and I'm doing it very democratically. For a month or two, you are charged nothing. Not only this, I insisted that all the time the key text will be for free. I don't want to play this game. I just want to have a medium where I reach people in a non-censored way. It will not be anything brutal and so on, just my line of thought. Sorry for being a little bit out. It's horrible, but I enjoyed it so much. So I'm not bullshitting to tell you, let's repeat it.
We want to have you back for the rest of the question about Heidegger, and Mikey has one prepared as a follow-up on the article that he inspired you to write on Nick Land.
Well, basically, I was going to ask you about Nick Land, and because we had that conversation.
fired me for that text. Yeah.
And it was correct. I wanted to let you know, just real quick, I know for a fact Land knows about the essay and has it because I sent it to him personally on Twitter. So I know he has it. And so I made sure, he knew about it because I wanted to see what he would say. He expressed interest in the fact that you had written a critique of him. I sent it to him, and then he does this thing. He takes these hiatuses from Twitter where he disappears for a while. So right after your article came out, he kind of vanished off of Twitter, and he hasn't been on there since. But I'm hoping that he'll read it and respond to it. Look, I mean, to be honest, my dream. Look, you had your debate with Jordan Peterson, but for all of us who do underground theory, the dream discussion or debate, whatever we want to call it, is
let's do it.
All right,
it's like 2 months, I would say, something like that.
And that's right. So. Dave, you messaged Land, you emailed them about talking to us, and so this is. It would just be so important. So next time, whenever we get to talk to you next, I won't keep you. I want to talk a little bit about his neo-reactionary politics, where he just admits to basically being a racist in the sense of he fully embraces social Darwinism, and he totally rejects the principle of equality. He thinks that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but this is what you learn from intelligent Darwinists, like the one who already died, Stephen Jay Gould, and so on. But Darwinism in Darwin doesn't mean survival of the fittest, the best wins. That's the whole point. The best don't win. You may be the best, but then for example, for an animal, some weather pattern, something changes, and you are a loser. It's not. Darwinism does not mean the heroes, the hardworking win, and so on. It's a much more desperate vision, Sorry, I have to drop you now, but we remain in contact, definitely.
Sounds good.
Have a nice time, and as much as you can in this really, really shitty world that we live. Thanks very much. Bye.
Get well. Take care. Bye. Rest up. All right. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. We're gonna switch gears here. Mikey, I want to give you a chance to kind of say some. Well, yeah, reflect on that for a minute while we get set up. And also, Nance,
great.
Nance, I saw you in the chat there. Are you actually around right now, or are you mobile in a way?
Yeah, I'm here for a bit.
Dude, how about that? He called you a traitor.
And I know. I always wanted to get gulagged by Zizek. I have the book.
Oh, there we go. You actually do have it. That was pretty cool, man. He said Timenergy. He said something about my concept Timenergy and me being in tune with this shit. So he hasn't even read the book yet, but he gets the basic gist of it. And then he also, we got him to talk about so much shit. It wasn't even on the list.
Let's do the Land debate.
He's down. So somebody send that shit to Nick Land.
Lemur King, come on. Come over and talk to us.
Summon the king. Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Theory Underground is on its way to Europe. Probably as you watch this, we are on a plane. Assuming that you're watching this near the time that it came out. All I wanted to let you know is on the screen, if you can put your eyeballs on the screen, you'll see the American Idiots EU book tour poster. But for all of you workers with earbuds and for the people listening from the podcast side, I'll just give you the rundown real quick. It has Paris, Brussels, Berlin, Vienna, Linz, Krakow, Glasgow, London, and Oxford. Yeah, we're doing something at Oxford University. Isn't that crazy? So Paris and Brussels are sold out. Several other events are going to book out really fast. The best way to make sure that you have a spot in person at one of these events, scan the QR code on the screen there, or go to theoryunderground.com/EU-tour-2024. That's where the QR code would take you anyway. Go there, RSVP for the stop where you want to meet up on tour. Check out the dates. These events happen between April 27th and May 25th. We're going to be there a whole freaking month. American Idiots. It's like that Green Day song. I don't want to be an American idiot. The basic point is we are American idiots, and we'd prefer not to. But that requires a lifestyle, living as learners, and that requires the tools for thinking. Theory is ultimately a lot of those tools. So not only do we think that we need to develop our capacities and understanding of these tools, but more importantly, we need to set up future generations to be able to do it for themselves, because the people that came before us did a really good job at a lot of things, but setting us up for that, not so much. All right. So with that, thank you. Take care. And now I'm going to roll another commercial, but it's also a Theory Underground commercial for a class that's coming right up in June.
Whether we are already fully in the grip of the techno-capital AI singularity or not, we likely feel as though there's not much we can do.
As allies of future generations, we aren't giving up so easily.
To quote the author of Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front, we wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what our life and our children's lives may be.
This fear is not new. The question of technology, media, and institutions became unavoidable in the 20th century. Yet when we think of institutions, the most radical critiques people have encountered came from either Michel Foucault or Jürgen Habermas. These thinkers towered over the theory scene in the 1970s and 80s as radicals took their long march through the institutions.
When it comes to theories of social change, the tendency is to put our hopes in leaving the existing institutions, the current order failing, or some overnight revolution to bring us salvation. Otherwise, we lean in and do the best we can with what's afforded by the existing institutions. Reform or revolution. Nothing ever changes, so we keep putting our hopes in education.
So progressives say, if only more people had access to better education, then that would solve the problems. But they have not thought seriously enough about the nature of our institutions, or this thing called education that they offer.
The most radical critiques of schooling that teachers encounter issue from Paulo Freire, Bell Hooks, and Henry Giraud, but none of these ever got to the root of institutions themselves. The theorist who did this was Ivan Illich.
Gaining brief stardom in the 70s, Ivan Illich was the father of the deschooling movement, inspiring hundreds of radical schools and generations of homeschooling parents. But this characterization of his work as the anti-school guy was his ultimate demise, for that only takes account of a surface level of his work. Illich was immediately misunderstood and quickly abandoned.
The issue goes far beyond schools. We spend our entire lives mediated through institutions that totalize, instrumentalize, and reduce humans, all of our possibilities, to something predictable, calculable, and exchangeable, easy to control. The interests of state and capital here overlap entirely. Our desires are thus turned into commodities and our time energy into labor power. Illich doesn't stop here, though, for institutions are not the whole picture.
When people think of schooling today, they think of studying for exams, not learning for the sake of learning. When people think of hospitals, they think of treating illnesses, not human-to-human care and well-being. When people think of transportation, they think of speed and efficiency, not the possibility of sustained, regular, and meaningful connections. When people think of reading, they think of collecting information, not lingering with an idea. The move from schooling to scolae requires serious inquiry into the conditions of possibility for this mode.
I'm calling for a sincere and earnest revival of Illich. While most introductions to Illich limit their engagement to his earlier works, a series of polemics against schooling and institutionalized consumer society, I want to go deeper and lead us to a more robust understanding of who and what a human is for Illich. With his help, we will reopen the question of what we are, what we can be, and the types of lives we are willing to give our time and energy to bring into being. if there are to be humans in the future.
This course begins on June 13th and goes through July 4th, 2024. It meets on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can enroll at theoryunderground.com/courses/Illich-1, or just click on the link in the description. For those who just want to spend a month really thinking about schooling and institutions, this is a fantastic way to do so. But for those who are looking to go deeper with a community of truth seekers who are going beyond the current theory scene to form an intellectual milieu, this is a fantastic way to do so, because the Theory Underground 2024 conference at the end of October 23rd through 27th is going to have special panels for presentations related to this course. Any student of this course will have opportunities to present, and those presentations can ultimately culminate in submissions that may be accepted into the anthology we are doing on the critique of schooling and education, to be published either at the end of this year or at the beginning of 2025.
Thank you.
We hope to see you there. Special shout out to Marilyn Lawrence, Bert Vanderkar, Carl Vanderlip, Nikolai, Sahil, Soxandra, and all of my other amazing patrons at patreon.com.